It's great to be here. You know, it's almost impossible for us to imagine life without freezers. And I'm a mega enthusiast of frozen food. I cook a lot at home, and I can't imagine making a meal without going to the freezer for something or other. But I want to remove us from just the world of freezing, just the world of frozen foods. You know what? The greatest risk to any organization or community is institutional blindness. So I want to lift us up above where we are today and to consider some of the greater aspects of the world in which we live. In particular, I want to view the world through the lens of the customer. What is the customer actually going to be looking for from this particular industry? How are customers, you and me, in our private lives going to change the purchasing decisions that we make about where and when and how and why we buy food to eat? And I want to suggest to you that it doesn't matter where you are in the food industry. And I work with many corporations right across every sector, every industry in the world, right across every aspect of the food and drink industry, from growing staff to warehousing it, to processing it, to getting it into retail or selling it online. And my suggestion to you is this, that in the future, as in the past, it will be very difficult to sell on all 7 of these, okay? There are 7 things that you can sell on the basis of, but it's difficult to sell on all of them at once. If you think of Lidl or who they are, or Tesco from who we will hear later, or you think of Waitrose, or you think of whoever it is that is selling stuff in the market, it's difficult to score number 1, top of the range, world class in every one of those 7. Price, speed, choice, quality, experience, inspiration, and trust. They are all levers for us. And I want to suggest to you that for frozen, price, speed, and choice score really high. But it is more difficult because of the very nature of the process itself to appeal to the same degree to the average consumer on quality, experience, and inspiration. And that's part of the journey I want to go through, is ways in which we can improve the score on those things. Now, you might profoundly disagree with that. You might say, no, actually, I think my frozen stuff appeals mainly on quality, experience, and inspiration. That's great, but I suggest that you are probably unusual. We'll see, but there's one of these 7 which is non-negotiable, of course, which is the one of these things which is absolutely non-negotiable, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you sell, and of course it's trust. And the reason for that is that there's one word that will drive the future more than anything else. You know, what is it? What is this single word that will drive the future? This single word has driven all of human history for the last 5,000 years and will determine human history for the next 2,000. This single word will determine the outcome of the Brexit referendum and whether Greece stays in or out. The single word has nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with innovation or demographics or economics. What is this single word? This single word, which is right at the very heart of the food and drink industry, is, of course, emotion. And it is hard to imagine a more emotional industry than food. You have already heard about, we've heard about the Campylobacter or the Listeria, and we can add a whole load of other things to that, like the dioxin thing in Belgium whenever it was a few years ago. Whatever it is, food is an emotional business. In China recently, you may have read that there's been a scandal about the safety of rice. The biggest staple that parents give their children is rice. And there was a discovery, it was leaked, that in a number of regions of China, the rice that was being sold was so polluted with heavy metals that if your child was to eat that all the time, there would be risk of brain damage. As a result of that massive crisis, the Chinese government said, don't worry, we've averaged the risk out. We're not going to tell you which particular region your rice comes from, because we think it would not be a good idea, because then some people who have contaminated rice on their farms would never be able to sell anything, which would not be fair. This is absolute truth. The Chinese government policy was to say, we will average the risk. We will stockpile all the rice and muddle it all up. Because we have decided that if you divide the risk by 10 for the average child, then we'll all be fine. So every child is being forced to eat rice contaminated with heavy metals. Food is an emotional business. And you can guess what happened. There was a boycott of the national staple by the mass market. Parents deciding to buy rice from Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, but anywhere except China. Food is emotional stuff. Food is emotional stuff. Whether people think that fresh is better than frozen, or frozen is better than fresh, or what do they feel about food? This is my granddaughter, one of our 3 granddaughters. Her mum is passionate about what her child eats. Food is emotional stuff. We think about the obesity campaign. Do you know, 1 in 3 newborn babies, like our granddaughter, 1 in 3 babies just like this, born in New York this morning, will develop adult-style diabetes as a child. They will develop diabetes that your grandmother or mother will expect to get at the age of 65 or 70 as a direct result of being overweight. But these children are developing adult-style diabetes as children at the age of 8 or 9 or 10, and it is likely to kill them. This is a pandemic which will cost the US government alone at least $100 billion every year. Yes, nutrition is becoming extremely important. Frozen plays to that. Things being balanced, fresh, that you don't stuff it full of preservatives because it doesn't need anything else added to it. Simple is best. Natural, that's all you need. I think of a huge number of fatty eaters, a huge range of them. My wife and I, we regularly host lots of people to our home. In the olden days, we just catered for a meal for 50. Fantastic. Now we have to have the gluten-free option. We have to have the veggie option. We have to have the vegan option, another 45 other options. You have almost as many options as there are guests who come to your dinner. Put your hands if you find it difficult now to cater for large numbers because of the range of things you have to offer. It's difficult. Why is that? And because of this choice, where do you go to find all these ingredients? Well, actually, frozen is a fantastic place to do it, especially online. We can give a tremendous range of the kind of things that Tesco could never possibly offer inside their particular store for just about every kind of conceivable dietary requirement you could possibly imagine. But one thing is certain. Our world gets overtaken by events quite quickly. Strategies, it doesn't matter what business you're in, can change faster than you can hold a board meeting. Now, you might be in the business of selling things to Russia, maybe you're not. Things happen within the European Union. A single death of a single child changes human history. 800,000 people then accepted as refugees into Germany. She wasn't the first child to die on the beach of Greece, but was the first to capture the vision and passion of people. Why? Because the future is not about deaths of children on a beach of Greece. The future is driven by this single word, which is emotion. There was a massive emotional reaction to one single death of probably the 2000th child who had died. Many children have died since, but one child caught the passion and the imagination. One child changed policy in Germany. One 22nd event in Japan was, of course, a shaking of the earth. Another 22nd event in Japan was a crack in a nuclear reactor. As a result of that, energy policy changed in Germany and in Japan for 40 years. Why? Because of an emotional reaction to a 40 seconds of history. Interestingly, in the UK, we didn't have the same. We've embarked on the biggest nuclear building program that we've seen in a generation. The same for China. But in Germany, cancelled. Japan, cancelled. So if we want to understand the future of food, it's the same if you want to understand the future of energy. We have to look beyond the statistics, the growth curves and the rest, and think about how the customer's emotion is likely to change in response to, let's say, another horse meat scandal or another traceability issue or whatever it is. Now, while it is true, and as we've looked backwards, interestingly, at things which have changed dramatically in 10 years, here's some actually quite good news. There are quite a few things that have changed relatively slowly. If you imagine an executive who you worked for in 1999. Imagine that the person had a tragic accident and has been in a coma for 15 or 16 years and has woken up in February and his wife has got a message to you and saying, George keeps mentioning you by name. He's getting back his faculty. His speech is difficult, but he understands everything. He's asking for you. Thomas, he's asking for you. God knows why. He wants to see you. And Thomas goes in to see George, and George says, sit down, Thomas. I just want to know what I've missed. I trust you. I've been asleep for 15 years. What did I miss? How long do you think it will take for Tom to bring George up to date with just about everything he needs to know? What do you think? Think about it. Smartphones, a war in Iraq, a big global recession, a bit more frozen food. What else are you going to do? What else? I reckon take less than 2 hours. Less than 2 hours. Why? Because actually, while we think that the whole world is changing continuously, actually, an awful lot of the world is continuing relatively slowly. So here is George. And you know what? He still recognizes the old brands. It's funny. My grandparents still recognize the old brands. It's strange. Actually, food brands are extraordinarily enduring. If you think about the brands that you used to love as a child, many of those brands are still being bought today. Put your hands up if you have a brand in your house you liked as a child. Food brands endure. Why do they endure? I'll tell you why. Because the future food is not just about taste, it's about emotion. It's about the triggering of memories. When we buy the brand, we connect with all the memories we ever had in the past. It's something that it's a lightning conductor to extraordinary strength of feeling, of association. Now, the web is undoubtedly changing us, and I absolutely agree about technology. Here is an interesting test, and the answer to these questions will determine something very significant about the future of frozen food over the next decade. So let's have a little journey into the digital world. Imagine last night you came to the hotel and you were watching TV, and for some bizarre reason, you were watching a program about Britney Spears, you couldn't remember her birth date, and you typed her name into your iPad. How many seconds will you wait for her webpage to load before you decide that life's too short to wait for her birth date? Program's going on, you're doing an email, someone's on the phone, you've clicked on the iPad. Nothing is happening. Put your hands up if you know it's 11 o'clock at night, you press the back button in less than 5 seconds because life's too short to wait for Britney Spears. Put your hands up and let me have a look at it. Okay. All right. Put your hands up if you think actually you might press the back button in less than 3 seconds. Let me tell you this. What do you think about your children? How long do you think your children are waiting to press the back button?
1 second.
1 second, thank you. How long do you think you will wait by 2020 to press the back button? Second. Put your hands up if when you go to an ATM cash machine, you find it irritating how many seconds you have to wait for the machine to go bloop, 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 bloop. Put your hands up if you find that irritating. Come on, let's have a look at it. My friends, if you remember nothing about the future retail, remember the 5-second test. You are showing yourselves the future. I'm not telling you the future. You're showing yourselves the future. The fact is, what happened with a web page is after 2 seconds you were puzzled. After 3 in the hotel room, you were annoyed. After 4, you thought the hotel sure needs to invest in their bandwidth. After 5, my friends, you had lost the will to live and terminated the entire business relationship in 5 seconds, right? 5 seconds. The future's about emotion. If 3 seconds you became emotional waiting for a slow web page. 3 seconds. 3-second test. I work with Google on digital marketing and with YouTube. I spoke at a conference recently which is their prime digital partners, the most important of all their professional advisors globally, advising the world on how to prepare for next generation mobile digital marketing. Now, here's a question. These people are advertising on YouTube. So when you go to a YouTube video to watch it, you're subjected to the tyranny that your screen is hijacked by a video inserted by an advertiser, correct? Put your hands up if you find that annoying. Now, how many seconds do you have to watch that before they let you click away? 3. Why is that? Because they know the 5-second test. They know, my friends, this is no joke. They know that after 4 seconds, they're destroying the brand they're promoting. Wow. After 4 seconds, Tesco is destroying its brand. Same with Marks & Spencer, same with Waitrose and frozen food campaigns. Because if they're not interested in watching for more than 3 seconds, they're starting to get really pissed off with you. Forgive my language. And after 5 seconds, they've lost the will to live, and they've determined they're never going to go into Waitrose again because of that stupid video. I'm not joking. That is why YouTube turned the button on after 3 seconds, because their study showed that anything else was counterproductive. For a significant proportion, for the majority of people will click away every ad after 3 seconds. So it's really important. Why is this important? It affects everything in retail. I'll come back to it in a moment. Here's another example. My wife is trying to get back £1,000 from our electricity company because they overcharge us every month. So she gets through to them, and they say, press 1 for accounts, press 2 for customer service. They owe us £1,000. She's being asked to press buttons. Put your hands up if you find that intensely annoying. Put your hands up if you think it is a social crime to put in such a system. And the people who do so should be put in prison. Now, I know that none of your companies here have such a robot answering service. None. Of course, you would never fall into such an idiotic trap. You see, what happens? What happens is this, and telcos do it, software companies do it, Microsoft does it. What happens is we can land up with a schizophrenic worldview where we have one side of our brain for the bottom line and managing the business, and another side of our brain for, oh yes, what it's like to be a human being. So what we're understanding is actually in 2.5 seconds is enough to make most human beings, including us, quite irritated. That actually we don't like being pursued by robotic systems. We want very instant things to happen for us, and this is changing how people are shopping. It's changing how people are cooking, and it's changing the attitude towards frozen. Now, here is an example. This is the reason why these convenience stores, which were written off 10 years ago, oh, all the convenience stores are going to die because they're being pushed out by the major chains. This is why the major chains then had to reinvent themselves as convenience stores. Why is that? Because of the 5-second test. 70%, up to 70% of all the traffic into these new corner shop stores is coming from people who live 800 meters away. Why? Because life's too short to walk 900 meters. Now, how long does it take to get into the car and start the engine and drive to a hypermarket? How long does it take to park at a hypermarket? How long does it take to get through the checkout in a hypermarket? 5-second test rules again. Every time, everywhere, 5 seconds. I'll tell you this in retail, anyone who can save a customer 5 seconds of time gets more cash in your pocket. If you can save one mouse click on the online thing, if you can erode the checkout time by 5 seconds, if you can save people wasting their time to find product, 5 seconds. I'll give you an example, which I'll come to in a little bit later, actually. So now here we have the convenience person. You know what? This convenience person, 40% of people in the UK have no idea what they're going to eat tonight. Did you know that? That's quite high. In the olden days, they'd have done their pre-planning, gone to the mega store and done their shops for a week. 40% of them have no idea what they're going to eat tonight, and they're going to make a decision walking home, and they're going to make a decision walking past their little shop. The big question is, are they going to buy frozen? Put your hands up if you think they're more likely to buy frozen than they would have in the past because of this kind of buying. Put up your hand, think if they might buy less frozen because of this kind of spontaneous grazing. Right, so we need to understand the 5-second test. It is changing everything in retail. Now, there's also a growth in eating out. Why is that? Because they get to the tiny corner shop and they say, oh, what the hell? We'll go out for a pizza because life's too short to cook. 5-second test. Now, what about this thing? See, put up your hands if you enjoy checking yourself out. Put up your hands if you find it annoying because it wastes 5 seconds extra of your time. Actually, how many seconds extra does it waste? Put up your hands if you think, actually, sometimes it takes you more than 2 or 3 minutes, more than it would have done. My friends, these are really, really important things. What's happening is retail has careered down a particular path, and we've left the customer behind because the customer has become extraordinarily time sensitive. Now, demographics really matters. Show me the demographics of any community, and I will show you the future of retail. And my wife was saying that actually in one of the big chains of either Asda or Tesco, she couldn't remember which one it was, but in one of the communities where we live, it's almost entirely full of Polish food. a mega chain. It's very difficult to find anything else other than Polish food in huge chunks of the shelves. Another one, it's almost entirely curries. Because we live in West London, and I live in a borough where 83 languages are spoken, where 67% of people in the schools in my borough speak 3 or 4 or more languages. So we have a multidimensional, a demographic mix which is absolutely fundamental to understanding how these markets are going to grow. 85%, by the way, if you want to know the future food, if you want to know the future frozen food, this is it. This single statistic tells you it all. 85% of the entire humanity living on the face of the earth will be living in emerging markets in just 10 years' time. And all of them will be aspiring to be eating frozen, as well as everything else, over the next generation. 1 billion children alive today, all of them are all growing up wanting to have a freezer. If they haven't got one, they will have one as adults. Meanwhile, we have the European Union, which is dying in comparison. So we need 4 couples to produce a single great-grandchild in Germany today. Because if you have only 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 children per couple, your population halves in every generation. That's another reason that Angela Merkel has actually opened the doors to 800,000 people. She actually needs them. The South Korean government has the same problem. They've published a date by which the last South Korean will become extinct. Why? Because they did the same maths as Angela Merkel. They worked out if your population halves in every generation, you need a whole load more people. You see, you either have to make people, or actually, it's all to do with older demographics. So it means that the people who are buying our stuff are getting older, and that changes a whole load of things, including packaging and printing. I wonder if you've had the experience of, in a hotel, of washing yourself in the shower with conditioner because you couldn't read the label. Put your hands up if you've done that. Why is it that they print on the bottle stuff which is so small you need your reading glasses? But how can you get your reading glasses? Because they're by the bed and you're already wet. Crazy, isn't it? It's institutional blindness. Huge numbers of customers are getting older. The biggest market for any restaurant is those over the age of 50. All of us need glasses to read. The menus are so small. You know, my wife and I went to a restaurant in Singapore not very long ago. The menu was so small and the lighting was so feeble that the waiter came with a torch. We've been in another restaurant where they also bring a torch and glasses, reading glasses, because they know that you cannot read their main marketing document without new technology. What is happening here? But joking aside, what it means is actually things like labeling. We need to rethink just about every aspect of the relationship with the customer in terms of the size of the print. And you see, we go back to immigration again. I know that wasn't meant to be a comment on the current debate, but you either have to make babies or you have to import them. That's the problem. The only trouble is that if you do, then you're going to get tragedy as well. But all of these things are changing your market, my friends. If you bring 2 million people in from Syria and a huge number of them land up eventually in Bedford, it changes the market for frozen food. Why? It changes what you're selling. It changes how you sell it. It changes the dynamics of that particular business. So we need to look at demographic trends with great care. Now, what about the future of out-of-town superstores? I think they have a great future and a difficult future. Here's one simple fact which we know, is that we're seeing everywhere convergence in price, quality, experience, and appearance. It doesn't matter which of the superstores you go into, they are becoming very similar. And this is causing a massive problem. We're seeing huge consolidation. You want to know the future of retail in any country? Just look what's happened across the European Union. Here we have 66% in Germany of the grocery market controlled by only 4 companies. In Germany, 37% controlled by discounters. Across the entire European Union, 10 companies are capturing half of all sales, and we've only just begun. If you want to know the future of retail food in India, it's going to go the same way. Can you name me a single Walmart-type chain in India today? No. Can you name me a single Walmart-type chain in Malaysia today, or in Indonesia, a nation of 200 million people? No. This consolidation story will dominate the global food industry over the next 20 years. And it's especially true here. Here we have, I think, 70%, as you know, of all groceries sold by the top 5 companies. I know we've got competition coming up rapidly from the budget chain, but if you include it to the top 10, you find a very, very high percentage. This means global buying, centralized just about everything. Now, here's the interesting thing. If we look at food spend across the European Union over a 12-year period, we saw that sales by chains grew, but food spending as a whole fell. Well, that's consolidation. But what's really interesting is that the sales capacity, that's the floor space for retail groceries, grew by 40% over the period when actual sales fell. What that means is we have massive overcapacity in the European Union and here. And that means, I'm afraid, you can't just go on opening more superstores. You can't go on opening more corner stores. A lot of it has to be trashed. So we're going to see a trashing and burning of 20 to 30%, I think, of all retail grocery space without even the growth of e-commerce, just because we are massively overcatered for the sales we have now. Now, when you add in the growth of online, then we are going to have a further overcapacity. So we've got 38% increase in capacity of hypermarkets, 72% increase in capacity of discount stores, and there has to be an adjustment. And there will be. And we're seeing of course, obviously the great debate between the budget and the people stuck in the middle, and the premium, and the premium's becoming the budget, and the budget's becoming the premium. So you go into Lidl and you find one of the best and cheapest champagnes you'll ever buy. It's best, it's going on quality and on price. Strange. They've managed to do both. So there will be a great stretching in both directions, we'll find. Up and down in the same stores. It's going to get quite a muddle. And how are we going to keep these customers loyal? That's the big question. You see, let's leave food just for a moment and let's talk about department stores. Now, I travel a lot. I go into many hotels, and they have their own department stores now. I go through huge shopping areas, shopping malls in airports, shopping malls in cities. And the funny thing is, I can't tell anymore what country I'm in. Have you noticed that? Doesn't matter. I couldn't tell you whether I'm in. I have no idea whether I'm in Venezuela, Peru, Afghanistan. Well, Afghanistan I can tell. But Singapore, I can't. Singapore, Hong Kong, they are the same. Same chains, same shops, same brands. It's fascinating, but extraordinarily boring. Very boring. And so what we're seeing now is a kickback, because actually you can't, to just open a shopping mall and put in there Giorgio Armani and Nike and a few other well-known global brands is, quite frankly, extremely boring now for the customer, because there's absolutely nothing in that shopping mall. It's fascinating. Anybody been here to Singapore recently? Fascinating. If you go to Singapore, you can drive for about 3 or 4 kilometers, and on either side you have one massive shopping mall after another. All the shopping malls are identical. They all have Giorgio Armani in there. They have Marks and Spencer's in there. They're almost the exact same combination. They have Starbucks in there. What on earth are they thinking? I cannot imagine. Because it's ultimately very boring. So what we're seeing, and this is happening in retail as well, it's now happening in it's happening in Waitrose, in Tesco, in Asda, it's happening in just about every big chain, is a flourishing of the boutique inside the store. Why? Because otherwise, what else is there to distinguish? So it's the little artisan place where they're making home bread, and special breads, or they're making special this, or it's something fascinating, or something really interesting today. To create something of the passion and theatre of market, sensations, emotions, smells. It's fascinating to see this happening as an equivalent in the frozen food industry. I know you had the speaker, I think the founder here, didn't you, 3 years ago, of Cook. What a fascinating story is that. Okay, it's a local kitchen. They just froze a lot of stuff, and they started selling it online, and they popped it through a local retail shop, and then the retail shops grow. The first time my wife and I discovered that particular brand, we're walking down the high street, and we see what looks like a delicatessen. We can see a cook. She seems to be stirring something, the steam coming up. That was clever. So we walk into what appears to be a delicatessen, and she says, "Would you like some?" And I can, fantastic aroma. I said, "Oh, yes, please, what have you got?" She says, "Well, I've got a soup, I've got a broth, I've got a lovely stew here. It's all freshly made in our kitchen." For a moment, I was seduced. I thought she was doing it in the back. I actually thought that all her meals were hot, or fresh, or cold. And I looked around, we tasted the food, and I said to Sheila, "Very strange. It's all frozen." "Ah, yes," she says. And then I discovered it was all a bit of not a con, but it was very clever because it directly appealed to my emotion. I was hooked. I was hooked emotionally by the sensation. I was hooked emotionally by the thought that she cooked it. I knew already it was an illusion. She cooked absolutely nothing. But I was seduced, and I bought from her a meal as if it had come from her own kitchen. Fascinating. Fascinating. So here is Frozen, reinventing itself as something that is in the moment, something that is artisan, that is interesting, that is fashionable, that is chic, that is smart, that is cool. A different kind of Frozen than I've ever seen before. A kind of Frozen I believe we're going to see embedded inside the largest and the smallest chains across the entire world. Why? Because people are so bored with just another trail of stuff. So another cabinet of stuff. Now, you're going to hear from grocery later on today, and there's a controversial survey. Is this good news? Is it bad news? We were debating this earlier. You could say this is fantastic news, and let's reverse this around. 68%, folks, of all UK consumers say frozen is as good as or better than fresh. Hallelujah. Okay, that's one way around. The other way around is you can say, well, pity about that. There's 32%, and they're quite influential. Both are true. What it means is we have a chunk of customers which are a potential growth market. If we can push them over, there's a great opportunity there, and I believe we can, and things like Cook will enable us to do it. But let's go back to this excited or bored thing. Let me ask another survey, because your views on the future are much more important than mine. Because you believe your views are true. Okay. So, let me ask you another question. Put your hands up if you find it an exciting experience to go to a large chain to do your weekly shop. Okay, I don't think I've seen one hand. Oh, one. What am I bid? Any more bids? One, two. I'm stuck with one. Put your up your hands if you think it's a grin and bear it experience, which you have to do. You hope you're going to come out and it won't be too expensive, but actually fundamentally, it's not something you particularly enjoy. Oh, my friends, we have got to sort this out, haven't we? If you said, put up your hands if you've seen a film recently, but you didn't really enjoy going there. Or put up your hands if you find it usually irritating when you go to the cinema. I mean, what? Brands exist, the world exists to entertain us, motivate us, inspire us, and encourage us. And my friends, what you told me is you're going to shop online. You've already told me that 5 seconds is a million years to you, right? You've told me that before you've even put the key in the car, before you've even put your coat on, you're profoundly irritated that you've got to go out. Because when you get there, you're not going to enjoy it. This is what, forgive me, I'm just reflecting back to you what you appear to, am I reading you right? You're telling me you're not going to enjoy it when you get there. You're telling me you're doing it on sufferance. You're telling me that you, therefore, and 5 seconds is a million years, therefore you're telling me already as you reach for your coat and keys, you are irritated. My friends, we have to change this entire experience. And it's not just a frozen food thing, it's a global thing, especially for the poor old retailer that's trying to sell your product in the store. Now, you might say, well, we couldn't care less because we're just as happy to sell it online. In fact, you might say, we could do better online because we can have the entire range of stuff, whereas in the supermarkets, we're getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed on space. And that's true. But I still believe we should be there, right before the customer, with stuff that they can smell and taste and feel, like the Cook, that they experience, that they're excited about, and that we can transform this from a boring experience to an exciting one. So it's about injecting a sense of theatre, passion, about having people who explain things, things that you can touch. You know, I did a retail meeting, grocery retail meeting in Germany. I had every large retailer in Germany present in the room. And I was pointing out that the only reason these days for buying fresh veg, freshly yourself, is to be able to pick and choose, right? If not, you might as well click it and buy it online. Because everything else you've told me is a waste of time. So when you go into this grocery, I said I'd just been doing a quick survey. I'd walked around 5 or 6 large groceries in Germany, and every single grocery was selling all their fruit and veg wrapped in plastic. So if we are selling all our stuff wrapped in plastic, we can no longer taste it, we can't get the sensation, we don't get the aroma. So what is the point of doing it? Actually, we're going to need to unpack a lot of this stuff. If we're going to survive another 10 years of this relentless growth of e-commerce, we've got to start offering something that is profoundly different as an experience for the customer in the retail space. And what it is, it's going back to the old market again. I love walking around Istanbul, for instance. You walk around the spice market, and it like hits your nose. Smell is extraordinarily powerful and important. And then we get to these kind of things. Actually, can we do it? Yes, we can. I believe we can. But it means a rethink in working with these stores themselves to completely reinvent what frozen could be about. I'm thinking 10 years out, 15 years out. How are we going to sell this stuff physically in the store? We're going to have to rethink this. And things like scent marketing, where I think we can do. That was what Cook was doing. They were using real scents, actually, of one of their products, reheated, very clever stuff. You know, we can do this with synthetic scents as well, and many of the stores that you sell stuff in are using this kind of stuff all the time. Another is to put fresh next to frozen. Oh, my goodness, I wish we could do this. You're saying, maybe we're doing it already, Patrick. Well, I'm not seeing it. So let me give you an example. I want to cook my wife a special meal. So I'm walking into the store, and the first thing I always get hit with is what? It's the fruit and veg, right? It's always the fresh stuff, which is actually quite inconvenient for me because all my tomatoes always get squashed by the time I get to the end, but never mind. So I get on my fruit and veg. So the trouble is, actually, let me tell you a secret. I prefer frozen. Okay. I really prefer the frozen. I like, the broccoli is fantastic, but I can't be bothered to prepare it. And actually, it's just as good out the freezer, and I don't know how much I want. It's just for two of us. I'm going to buy broccoli. I'll throw 3/4 of it away. I can't stand it. So I want frozen. Where am I going to find the frozen? Can you help me? I'm constructing my menu. I haven't decided what I'm going to eat tonight. I'm a 4 o'clocker. I'm wandering around. I've decided, lovely. Oh, bit of broccoli, bit of this, bit of that. Actually, let's do fish. Go to the fish counter just opposite. I've nearly got my meal together. Trouble is, actually, at that moment, that's my decision time. Fresh, frozen? I want the frozen broccoli, but where am I going to find it? Oh, dear Lord. Now, and I'm doing this. I'm now putting the fresh stuff back because I'll go for frozen. Now, where am I going to find frozen? I guess I'm going to find frozen somewhere in here. I have no idea where. So I'm hunting around twice. So you've doubled my experience. Now, could we do it? I believe we could. Can we combine fresh and frozen? Yes, we can. Now, I was talking with my wife. She says, yeah, but it's all very well. You like to have the frozen stuff at the end because then it doesn't melt in the bag before you get home. Listen, I'm sure we can find a technological solution to that. And talking of fresh and frozen, here's an example. This is a lovely product. I haven't been paid to do this. It just caught my attention. Outside there, this is frozen parsley. I think it's fantastic. I want some in my kitchen tomorrow. But I don't know where I'd find it in the store. Where I want to find it in the store, of course, is next to fresh. So I'm probably going to look for next to bundles of fresh parsley. And by the way, this is fresh parsley. They're selling fresh parsley. The entire proposition is this is fresh parsley, diced, ready to sprinkle from frozen. That's why I love it. You mean, I said to them outside, you mean it's not dried? You mean, I thought it was dried and then frozen. No, Patrick. We take a clump of fresh parsley, we cut it up in the kitchen, we stuff it in a bottle, and we freeze it. I said, that's so cool. I want that next to the bundle. I don't want it in the dried parsley bottle because it isn't dried parsley. I want it next to where Sainsbury's and Tesco are selling their pots. You know the pots they sell with the stuff, the parsley growing out of it? That's where I want it. Because it's the time when that's what I would normally buy. I say, right, I should buy a whole load of parsley in a pot. But actually, this is great. This will last forever. I'll buy 10 of them. So where would I like to have this? And I was thinking, it's very small. Goodness me. I bet that's going to defrost in less than 5 minutes. And I'm thinking, well, come on, folks, we can sort this out. I'm not a technologist, but couldn't we surround it with a water bag which is frozen? It's a tiny little water bag. It's half a centimetre thick. It adds a little bit of weight. And so it just keeps it cool. Or couldn't we put a little bit of insulation around it? It's only in a small pack. I bet it wouldn't add too much to the price. Couldn't we make it so basically you can throw it, you can buy it frozen, fresh, it doesn't matter. You just bung it in and away you go. I think this lovely little thing reminded me of Cook. Because I thought it's an interesting way of thinking about frozen. Frozen, welded in, integrated with every purchase that I make. So we forget all this business of all this kind of stuff here. We break it all the way out. We put it next to frozen. We add scents in as well. We help people to understand. Maybe have someone actually pulling clusters of rosemary. Say, smell this. Isn't this fantastic? This is the rosemary that's in here. Wow, lovely. And a clustering of products. And what's fascinating about our online market is how advanced we are. If you want to know Germany's future frozen, look at the UK. UK online grocery sales are 10 times that in Germany. Put up your hands if you knew that. It's astonishing how much further ahead we are, and 6 out of 10 in the UK are buying online. So we in the UK are reinventing grocery retail. There's no other nation on earth that is doing it as much as us. 1.1 billion packages were delivered to people's homes last year from online. The trouble was, 980 million of them were not there. The people weren't there to receive them, which is why we've seen this explosion in pay-per-click. And actually, it's too slow. You told me that 5 seconds is a million years. How long does it take to get the online stuff home? I've said to you that people don't decide what they're going to eat often till 4 o'clock in the evening. They want it at home by 6, right? So we're talking about 2-hour delivery time. 1 hour delivery time. Can we do it? Yes, we can. Along comes Uber and Google. This is a fantasy partnership, but just be with me just for a moment. So let's imagine that my Mac at the back there, imagine my power supply is broken. I'm running from here to another speaking engagement, then I'm on a plane tonight to New York. I have to have a new power pack. I can't go to an Apple store. I've no idea. I need to catch a train to London and so on. I'm completely wrecked. What do I do? Well, in the old-fashioned world, I don't know what I'd have done. I'd have sent a runner to some Apple store and hoped to meet me at Heathrow, I guess. And that's a very expensive way of doing it. But enter the world of Uber and Google. So Uber and Google decides no more warehousing. Warehousing, a last century idea. The idea of having an Amazon warehouse, centrally or one or two, last century idea because the warehouse is too far away from your home. You can't deliver fast enough. So now we're delivering from the store. So the Uber signal goes at the same moment as the message to the Apple store. Apple store person is told, Uber car on way to pick up Patrick Dixon's power supply. Here is the payment. Please meet him at door. The smart store person in Apple can see the Uber car coming. And they're in phone communication instantly. Hello, are you John? Yes, Tom, I'm just getting it now. I'll be 8 minutes. Where are you? Well, you can see me. Okay, I'll be there in 5. Pans it to the person outside. At that moment, I can see the person in the store. I can see the person in Uber. And I can see me, and they both can see me. And they can see I'm on the move at high speed. I'm now in a car on the way from the centre of London, hurtling down the A4 to Heathrow Airport to catch a plane with a very tight time. I'm now being chased, not by an Uber car because they're so last century, so slow. I'm being chased by a bike. An Uber bike is now chasing me down the motorway with my power supply in the back and can see me. And the first set of traffic lights they come to, they draw up alongside. I can see them coming. I look to my right, wind down the window. There's the bike coming up. Hey, thank you, Dr. Dixon. Bye, thank you, bye. Click, click, click. Money paid. Uber charge £14.99. Could that happen today? You bet. All the technology is already there to deliver it. What does that mean for groceries? Really good news. What's it mean for the corner store? Fantastically good news. Because suddenly every corner store becomes swept up into this online e-commerce world and the whole world goes full circle again. Now, I have to say it's already happening. The small corner stores are doing really well out of pay-per-click. There are newsagents that were about to go bust, but because of pay-per-click, because actually most people are now saying that actually given a choice, if they're working all day, they prefer to have pay-per-click than have something being delivered every hour on the hour and all of that kind of stuff and having notes in the post office. Actually, it's given us an opportunity to reinvent this thing. So it's really good news. We can connect these things together. It means we can have an interactive way of delivering a lot of frozen stuff to people cool, in their freezer, ready for them to collect within 1 hour. And it's not actually that expensive to do. And location-based marketing is therefore absolutely huge. It's the ability to know where the customer is as they come into the store, messaging them appropriately. It's the ability to know where the customer is if they're on the office or on their way home or they're on their commute or they're at Heathrow Airport. Wherever they are, we can message them and we can deliver to them. This is a completely different way of thinking about retail. It's all connected with big data, and I would just say finally, and with this I finish, little data is what really matters in this business. Here's an example. Tesco may be about to talk about it. We had a fantastic speaker in a few moments from Tesco after the coffee. I think this is ingenious. Tesco Price Promise is a tiny little piece of little data, but it's delivered to the customer at the right time. It adds confidence, builds value, and it's all about talking to customers on the journey of life. Having that conversation. It's about saying the old world was you go to the big store, buy all your frozen food and come home, or you order it online. The future world is all a bit more muddled up together. Lots of different ways of accessing this stuff. Future is frozen and fresh, I think more mixed up, much more sensory, much more of interest. And then we come back to the sevenfold thing again. Trust is number one. We assume that. We put a great big tick about that. Frozen food, I think people trust it a lot. But deciding for your brand, for your particular segment of the frozen food market, are you going for quality, experience, inspiration, which is the cook, in which case you're going to charge a massive premium and make a lot of profit? Or you're going to go for price, speed, and choice, which could be the online, cheap, very free and easy, heavily discounted, bulk purchase, whatever it is. But just knowing what it is we're going to go for, ticking the 4 key boxes for you, and then putting another one on trust. And as we do that with every single part of this business, I believe that frozen foods will have a tremendous future as you continue to evolve and reinvent alongside the customer, remembering always that we keep the customer's experience in mind. Thank you very much.